Okay, so thank you all for coming to the final panel of AfroCannes 2025. We are talking about something which is perhaps most prescient for many people here, which is budgeting. And with regards to budgeting for film production, we will be talking about the process from short and long haul format, festivals, screenings, and markets. I'll quickly have everyone go through and just say their names and sort of what they do or their main engagement in the industry. Starting on my right, please.
Hello, everybody. I can hear myself in my ear. Nici Brueckner, producer based in Berlin. I'm half Senegalese as well. I'm working on series, features, and distribution, and I'm also a co-director for a festival in Berlin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Toney, and I'm an actress who wrote and directed her own feature film to greenlight herself.
Hell yes.
And I'm here meeting with financiers to make the next one. And I live in Los Angeles, born in Hawaii, and it's been really great just learning so much about all of the cultures of indigenous peoples and those from the African diaspora. Thank you.
For you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natasha Preville. I am the founder of the Brixton Film Festival in London. I'm an exec producer. I run a creative and cultural arts organisation called the Ascension Agency, and we are working on building greater collaboration, sustainability, to ensure that all the voices that probably don't get space in places like festivals and so on are heard, felt and seen.
Safety first. Okay. Hi, I'm Jon-Carlos Evans. I'm based in Berlin, originally from St. Louis, Missouri, home of Miles Davis, Josephine Baker, for those in the know. I'm a director, writer, producer. I also make music, specifically like audiovisual performance. I'm also working in Berlin as the program lead for the Creative Film Production MA at Catalyst University, which is a private school in Berlin.
Yeah, I've got a mic. I'm Stephen Adams. I'm the founder of Alta Global Media, which is a boutique management and production company. And relevant to this conversation, I'm also on the board of several film festivals, including the Durban Film Mart. I'm an advisor to the AFRIF in Lagos, British Film Institute America, and the Holly Schwartz Film Festival in Los Angeles, where I have helped them internationalize and come to Cannes and celebrate filmmakers in London. And, you know, I think that we're going to get into this conversation, but festivals are a world, and we all need to be united in a way, because we're the first distribution for everything sometimes.
Absolutely, well said. And actually, I believe Holly Schwartz is one of our recent sponsors.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
I see the logo right there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm in contact with the folks out of Los Angeles, as a matter of fact. That's really cool. So I want to sort of speak about festivals. There is a bit of a perception sometimes that some films, particularly African auteur films, are seen as only festival darlings. And I wonder if if any of you guys want to speak on the nature of creating content which can do very well in the festivals, but also go beyond that to have more mainstream appeal, and any sort of tricks and tips, perhaps in terms of structuring, marketing, or even designing of the story that you think can achieve that. For whether it be yourself or anyone who. Sure.
So that's a very interesting question, and just to give you a very small bit of context, my background is actually TV. So I worked for many years across BBC Two, BBC Four, UK TV drama, which we launched. So we'd have to do all the production for all of those channels. So, you know, as a group production lead. So it's very much about the minutiae and the money and how you make things work. No matter what, you have to make them work. So it's with that kind of background and passion that I stepped into this space and then decided to do it for, you know, the film festival. So essentially, when it comes to film, what we did is we made them all ourselves. So the Ascension Agency was set up to break down barriers to entry and understanding for people that look like us, that couldn't get into the industry or understand, didn't have that link, didn't have that hookup, didn't necessarily have the person that would tap them on the shoulder and say, you're ready now, go on to the next stage, or whatever validation or whatever systems we have. I think you'll find anybody in this creative space, the trajectory in your career is not like that. It goes like that. You know, or like that. Absolutely, but it's the passion and the resilience. Not down for too long. It's the passion and the resilience that keeps you going. So I decided to take back the power, essentially. So I knew that power was when you were in charge of time and money, so to speak. So I made it my mission to get funding that will enable me to put on masterclasses for everything to do with the creative arts, everything to do with the whole production process, and teach those that were 30 and under, in between as well, but specifically for the festival, 30 and under and 50 and above, because we found it very important that we talk about the younger generations, but generation, X, and we call it generation excellence, over 50, is very important. We find that link, if intergenerationally, as something we wanted to showcase, because people are pioneering, people were always doing this. So we cannot forget that. But more to the point that you were asking, taking back the power in as, if I got the money, I knew I could put on the masterclasses. I'd take everyone through the 5 stages of production, be it discovery, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. They would picture their films, they would choose the ones that they wanted to make, we would take them through the production process. We made all the films with our teams. I won't tell you how long that took to do, it was very short, but I hopefully wasn't reflected in the quality. I'll show you if you want to see. But effectively, that then made them understand to some degree how it all worked. We took them through how you budget that, how you make things work, the favours you pull in, how you speak to people, how you double up on certain jobs to get this done. Because let's get it straight, when you're starting out, you're going to have to get your hands really dirty. But, they were arrestingly talented and willing to do that. So what we'd then do, once a film was made, everyone had a credit. We'd have it filmed at either BBC Studios or at the Brixton Film Festival. That constituted their theatrical release, and therefore they got their IMDb credit. So keeping everyone in the process of how to budget, but also being mindful of, where you can cut back, move things, and know it's possible and get your hands dirty. So in terms of marketing, we had a lot of our young people do a lot of that, but we also went to press. So don't forget press. If you can get press involved and get your press releases, particularly with local press, that was so important, and that's what enabled us to have a sold-out film festival at the first one.
Super.
I want to piggyback on what you're saying about festivals. Ava DuVernay's company Array does a lot of distribution, and a lot of their strategy is based on a festival release. But what can happen with that is that you build communities around, let's say, the U.S. or wherever you're distributing through like multiple festivals. If you hit 50 festivals, that's a lot of people that know your work. You can sometimes circle back and then create, your own four-walling, as we call it, where you're independently releasing for a limited amount of time, and you can actually make money. The other thing to remember too with any film is that if it has a core subject matter, it may also be appealing to a brand, which I think we need to also include in our conversation, because these days that's a great source of funding. Commercials are failing, and films are not. And I'll give you one example of a short film that debuted at Holly Shorts that wound up going on to win the Oscar, called Hair Love. And it's a beautiful animated film, and it cost $1 million to make, which is a lot of money for a short film, but very little money for a commercial, and especially a commercial that won a fucking Oscar. So, we have to look at what are the core things that your film is talking about, and what are the core values of some companies that say they want it, because they really do have missions. They know that they can't just take money from us, they have to be giving something back, and there has to be some interaction with a community. So look at those things as other possibilities for partners. Sometimes it's also universities or schools where your film has a topic, or a charity that is driven by, say, like a female issue, and you are hitting that nail on the head, and so that they have money, they have donors, they have boards who are saying, great, this is another way for us to extend our mission or educate people. So you got to get really creative about who you're partnering with and how you're using all these things we're talking about. But a festival is a great place to start, to say, my film's here, I need all of you to come see it, and then we can talk about how we can collaborate down the line. And this has nothing to do with theaters, so there you go.
For sure. And I mean, thank you so much for that insight regarding festivals, but I think what you're also touching on a bit, just to dovetail into sort of spreading out the IP to sort of a transmedia narrative. It's so much more important these days that you don't just have one approach to reaching whatever market you're shooting for, but if you have a series that you want to eventually have a film adaptation to, so you position it accordingly. Maybe you do something even more creative with a comic book or something of that nature to spread out the IP. I believe that you were working on a project similar to that. Is that correct?
I mean, in my case, it was a bit of a catch-22. Something I've always tried to avoid is writing for the festival, writing for the hot topic of the moment, because it always changes. For me, it's once I realized I had to embrace what I already knew and who I was, going backwards, realizing that I love sci-fi, I love supernatural films, I love genre. And then once I just embraced that in my work, it opened up more of an audience. It opened up more doors. The project that Nici and I are working on together, she's the producer of my series, The Lost Gods of Memphis. We won the fan pitch at the Sitges Film Festival. I didn't know the festival existed. I didn't know that we had such a strong genre space for in festivals. There's at least 20 festivals in the Méliès Federation. And because of that network, it led me to find other partners for the series. And initially, we weren't really sure where it was going to go because it's a big world. It's a mythology, it's a noir, it's very black, it's completely black. And so we would run into some obstacles because of that, but I just ignored it. It's like, no, that will find its audience. There are people like me. Essentially, I was writing for like the 13-year-old in me who loved mythology, that loved comic books, that understood black history and had that inside of me. And so once we, realized we had that to our advantage, we created a comic series to kind of like go along with that, so it can exist in any medium. And I don't care where people find it. If you find the film first, you find the comic book first. We're also working on like an audio drama version of the same story. Whichever one you find, it'll lead you back to the other medium. And so it reinforces itself in that way.
Can I? Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add to that The Lost Gods of Memphis is also community building. Like, we've knocked on big doors and they kind of said to us, okay, you're very ambitious with what you're trying to do. And then we kind of decided, okay, well, let's build on the ground up. Let's build our community and take them up. And then we're all going to, knock on that door with 1,000 people and kind of go, hello. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to finish that too. I'm sorry. Yeah, because I remember working with a young writer who was literally 21 years old and he had an incredible science fiction script. And, like you're saying, sci-fi is always like, it's big, it's expensive. And so people kept saying, this is amazing, but who is he? I'm like, well, his name's on the cover of the script. I'm like, but who is he? I'm like, I know. I'm trying to ignore what you're really saying to me, which is like, this is not known IP. This is not someone who's established in the system, and we're not going to take a risk on him. So we decided to stop and create a graphic novel, which we did very inexpensively. We found illustrators out of Malaysia, and they did great work on this thing. And while we were doing that, we built a social media world for this thing and started releasing images of the characters. And weirdly, I didn't expect this, it kind of started attracting an audience, and then I started getting requests for interviews for the creator. And I'm like, well, the book's not even done yet. They're like, yeah, but we want to see, we want to get ahead of this. So we had all this press as well. And then when it was ready, I reached out to 50 independent bookstores around the U.S. and said, I'm going to send you a link. When this book is ready, will you carry it? So they all said yes. And we sent out, 50 copies to every one of those. And then we put it on Amazon. And then we started doing book signings. And by the time all this came together, this guy was like a little sought after. And so then I was able to say to the same people, would you like to read an adaptation of the #1 best-selling graphic novel on Amazon? And they were like, well, of course. And so all of a sudden there was like this feeding frenzy, and he wound up getting an offer for this project. And the only reason it didn't go forward is because of something called COVID. And that's another story.
My experience has been very different from all of the beautiful people on this stage. I really didn't know what I didn't know starting out. I was kind of like a grassroots filmmaker. I sold all my things and moved into my car and bet my last hope on making my film. And the way that I kind of implemented some of these strategies was I just watched, like, what are these big studios doing and how do I make my content and my marketing and my posters look like that. And then when I would go to festivals and I would do these 4-wall screenings, I would make all of them immersive. So my film, for example, it's called Bora. It's a psychological thriller that merges Black and Latin culture. And the theme of it was like the Day of the Dead mask, the Dia de los Muertos mask. So at all of my events, I would have those masks. I would have them given out. I would have smoke. I would make it very like enticing when people were coming in so that this was not just a screening, but an experience. And they didn't know that it was literally just me behind the curtain, like pumping the smoke machine, taking my heels off and then running back and speaking to people as if it wasn't just me behind the curtain. So I say that to say that I think sometimes there can be like a wide gap between like the haves and the people who are really dominating this industry and doing everything we want to do, and then the people who are just starting out. And it's like, how do I get from there to here? How do I get there? And it's really just like being resourceful, using tools like AI, thinking of yourself and your product as if it already is, treating yourself like you are, Issa Rae or Steven Spielberg, and really like valuing your name as a brand and saying, okay, before I release this poster, like, is it something I'm going to be proud to release in 5 years? Am I still going to be proud of it in 5 or 10 years? And just really like creating as if you are a studio and studying the way the studios structure their posters and trailers and finding the tempo and the pacing. And even if you've never done it before, just like, until you find your own style and your own flair and your own flow, use that as your roadmap because it's there, and so that was what I had to do. I had to, look at the work of people like you all and say, okay, I'm down to my last $50, and I've spent everything I have, but I still need to get this movie poster made, and I still need to put out a trailer that looks like a studio made it so that people will actually show up to my screening and that these festivals will actually accept me as they're looking at this script and saying, who is this chick? Who is she? So I had to make it look and feel like a studio was behind it, because otherwise nobody would let me in the room.
Yeah.
So
you're touching on what we discussed initially, which is with a bootstrap budget, with a shoestring budget, with no budget, using your creativity, the same creativity that you put into the script, the same creativity that you put into the storyboarding and the shots has to be put into the entire life cycle of some of these projects that you're on. You mentioned this, the graphic novel, both of you have. You reminded me of something that, a very creative idea that I found through a friend of mine in film school, where he had the idea of just sort of soft lying about the IP. So he made a podcast, and he would just tell people, it's based on a successful podcast on Spotify. And then at one point he said...
Define successful.
Precisely. Incredibly relative, yes indeed. And at one point he said series, and then he realized, shit, I have to go make some more. So, and with that he was able to get himself into certain rooms. So sometimes it is, believing in yourself and honing it and being that thing before you have quote unquote made it. Sometimes it's faking it before you've made it, and sometimes it's realizing that if you're here, wherever you are, if you're still creating and producing and still networking and doing all the little things, you have made it. You haven't given up yet, which means you are actively progressing. You are actively doing the thing that we all hope to do and will hopefully all continue to do until we find the next steps of our path. I've been trying to have in all of these panels a moment of hope, and I know it's a rather quick one to be fair, but I wonder if each of the panelists can just sort of take 30 or so seconds, whether you have done this so far on the festival or not. It's the final panel. I would like you to give a quick moment or a statement of hope that you see in your industry and your sector for the future. Starting with yourself, Nici.
I guess a little bit of hope was last night. So I'm based in Germany, and it's quite difficult as a black filmmaker to find food. And I went to this villa last night that was run by Nord Media or somebody. And there was like 45 Germans there, I think 3 black people. And eventually everyone, and I kind of just went, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but whatever. Then everyone just like left the party. And in the end it was like, oh, come sit down, come sit down. So there was just 10 of us left. And we sat around this table, and I just went into these really deep conversations with these Germans and kind of met them face to face on the ground instead of trying to knock on their door. And they were all big people, like from Hessen Film Fund. And for me, that was hope, because it was all of a sudden I'm sitting here with these big people that I actually have no access to, but they were really happy to just sit and listen and talk and exchange. So for me, that was a big thing of hope. Yeah.
You know, I started out being like a thirsty actress, like spam emailing casting directors and like, you know, the hustle of like auditions. And then it was like I wasn't black enough for this part, but I was too black for this one. I wasn't Latina enough for this one, and I wasn't indigenous, and I wasn't white, and I wasn't quite African either. And I was born in Hawaii, and I grew up around Mexican cholos driving lowriders, so nobody knew where to really.
So really very American.
Nobody knew where to really put me, and so I realized after like failed audition after failed audition that I was gonna have to greenlight myself if I was gonna be taken seriously and given a shot. And I say that to encourage, you know, anybody who's feeling that way, like you don't really fit anywhere, or maybe you feel like you fit everywhere all at once.
I gave you a shot.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. No, I'm just kidding. No, this is no. I was in a couple of his films. He saw me, and he gave me, Mark Casey gave me some work for sure, and I'm so grateful to you. But and I'll wrap this up because everyone else has something to say. But just believing in yourself and starting where you are with what you have, even if it's just a cell phone and some wireless mics that you got on Amazon Prime, just get to work. And like if you build it, then it will come. And you know, a year and a half ago, I was like struggling to pay my bills and living in and out of cars and paying the actors with my food stamp card and paying for their food with my like unemployment. And now I get to sit here with these people who I look up to so much and respect. And that's, yeah, so there is hope for you. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen indeed. And I love that, Tiffany, because what I'm going to say kind of comes off that. But just to go back, you have to see this woman's movie, Bora. I'm still processing it now, to be honest. So yeah, excellent work. And that's the kind of thing I live for, because, you know, what I will say is know your power. You don't need validation. If you have a dream, you have to hold on to it with everything you have and run with it. Yeah, because before you achieve everything, before anyone that you aspire to or what have you had achieved anything, they had to believe, and then they had to make the world believe. And that's what we did with the Brixton Film Festival. I mean, yes, it's in its infancy, but I believed, I saw that, I knew I could do it, and I did it. I paid for it all myself. Do you know what I mean? I funded that, and that was a great feeling. And you need to, you know your power, know you can do it. You know, you don't need to wait. And one of the things that inspired me to do it as well, having come to Cannes for a few years now, I wanted it to be, and I don't want it to be said in a bad way, but I always wanted it to be the antithesis of Cannes, but with the feeling of quality and you know, exuberance and truth and honesty and authenticity. You know, I wanted people who were telling their stories, who often felt heard, seen and felt, to be heard, seen and felt, you know, and that's what drove me. So my thing to take away is just do it. If you've got a dream, just do it. And I know I had to trademark the Brixton Film Festival before I even did it, because I knew if nobody was doing that already, they're gonna come for me. Who does this woman who has her little masterclasses up there think she is taking on the Brixton Film Festival, to the point where when I called up the intellectual property office to start trademarking process, the person down the phone said to me, "Are you sure this isn't taken? I'm gonna have to check that." So I don't know if it was from South London as well or what it was, but I said, I don't know, I've checked. He said, to be honest with you, there might be a reason for that. There might be a reason why there isn't a Brixton Film Festival, for whatever it is, and that's what this process will draw out. But come October 2023, got my certificate and we trademarked it. So that was it. And what I will end on, inevitably, like 2-3 days before the festival actually happened, because of all this press, all this local press that was being generated, they picked up on it. Someone called me up and said, I own the Brixton Film Festival. Like, I've been working on it for 10 years now. I'm like, well, I have to seek some legal advice, to be honest. And because I knew that would happen, and in actual fact now we're talking with each other, and he just wanted to have something as an homage to his aunt. His mother was in the Windrush, and we can work on that now. So we've got past that, and I didn't have to do that, of course, but I'm about that though. I want us all to win, and we can all win, and I want us to get off this crabs in a bucket situation. It doesn't have to be like that. There's room for all of us, there's room for all our stories, so just keep doing the great work and connect yourself with whoever believes in you and that can help you thrive.
Amen.
Excellent. So my hope is really connected to the theme of the festival, the idea of Afrofuturism, which a lot of people have taken on aesthetically, like as it's become more mainstream because of films like Black Panther, but a lot of people forget the actual philosophy behind it, which is multiplicity and multi-contextuality, which is where all of us exist and why we're all here. Like, I'm an American, I was born in the US, but I live in Germany. If I go far back enough, we're from Cameroon, we're Balanta, but then the Balanta are Egyptian originally. My father's side, we're Bamileke, and they're from Sudan, and then that goes even further. And we were all enemies at one point, but then we came together. And so in realizing that we do exist in this present space, but we still have a responsibility to the future, to pass on what we've learned. For instance, I didn't have any black film professors when I was in university. I did BA 4 years, MFA 2 years, 6 years of film education. I never had a professor that looked like me. I'm that to my students now. Every year, I've been teaching for 8 years. First 2 years, no black students. Next year, 2. And most recently, I think we have 15 or 20 now. They're from Cameroon, they're from Ivory Coast, they're Jamaican, they're Nigerian, they're black Australian, black Latino, Afro-Latino. And it's grown. And so I feel this responsibility to remember that I come from a legacy and that I want to pass that on and to help perpetuate that so that we don't have this crabs in the bucket situation and also that we don't minimize ourselves. This is controversial, I don't write that I'm a black filmmaker because you just look at my fucking picture. I'm clearly black. I will write, I'm a filmmaker who works in speculative fiction, I work in sci-fi, I work in fantasy. If you want to know where I'm from, we can talk about that. But this is already inside of me. It's there. I don't feel like I have to put that hyphenated experience on top of what's already there. Because it's in my work. It's in the style of the work. It's in the themes of the work. But I don't want to say I am a black filmmaker in order to fit into what they want us to fit into. Because we're filmmakers, we're artists, we're humans. And that's the most important thing. So hopefully we get past that. Got a mic.
I'm not rushing because that was a moment.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna I gotta love you and leave you because I'm heading to my screening tonight. I feel like I want to comment on the shift in consciousness that I've been experiencing, and it's more to do with every year. I mentioned it earlier this morning. Like every year, there's more and more of an African presence at Cannes. In the beginning, people were always looking to, and I'm just gonna be frank, like sometimes throw their agenda on me. And can you do this for me? And now I'm like hearing people who've figured things out and then have done extraordinary things with their creativity and are really embracing the power that they have inside of themselves and are no longer coming like with a shopping list of can you do this, can you do this, can you do this, can you do this? Because I think that, you know, in a way creatives are often were trained to do that sort of thing. And when they unleash themselves and they realize that the only boundaries are in their minds and the time, the limited time we're on Earth, that's the only other boundary. You know, you can get a lot done. And when you start collaborating with the whole mindset of people, that can be scary for the rest of the world to realize that when a group or an entire continent, or the continent's diaspora decides to shift all that power to the rest of us, I'm just saying, watch out, because we've barely gotten started. So, congratulations to all of you for being who and what you are.
Absolutely. Please, a round of applause. And a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying.
Awesome.
And thank you, everyone. AfroCannes 2025.